All right, guys. I know this one's been a long time coming, but we now have an IAC driver set up on our system, but what can we do with it in Ableton Live? So I'm going to show you quickly one or two of the things that you can do with that IAC driver and why it can be useful. I have a single MIDI track here, and I don't need any MIDI input. We're going to generate the MIDI signals in our clips. I could use input, but I don't need any input here. My output I'm going to set to the IAC driver bus 1. I can choose a channel here, and that's the channel that will be broadcast on. I'm using a tool called MIDI Monitor to see what the system is generating regarding MIDI. And it helps me monitor and diagnose potential problems. So you might want to download that and install it and use it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create let's go into here and let's create a clip. Double click, and I want to create the clip and make it maybe, we'll have it loop, but let's make it end at measure 9 and make it 8 measures long. That'll give us enough time, and I'll show you why that's important. So you'll notice here I've folded my notes up. It's easier to kind of see what they are if I do that. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we want to control something with C -2. If we click on our monitor button, we can see a signal being delivered to the channel, noted here. And then if we want to control something outside of this channel strip, we can. So I'm going to create some more MIDI tracks, and then I'll group them together. I don't need to do this, but just for this one, I'm going to group them together. And let's say that I wanted to control this mute button with a clip in this track. I can't do that using the normal envelopes, because the only envelopes I'm offered is the MIDI control and the mixer. And that would be all of the CCs, the continuous controls, and the mixer controls, speaker on, off, etc. But I want to control something in this column, and that's why the IAC driver comes in handy. So I'll double click, actually go back to notes here, and I'm going to draw a note in somewhere down the line here. And I have out here, now let me show you under the live preferences the way I need to set up my MIDI. The input, we need to set this to remote on. We want to listen. We want Ableton to listen to all of the traffic that's coming in on the IAC driver. Basically, what we've created is a sort of radio station. We are broadcasting a signal out on 16 channels to the IAC driver. It's kind of like the virtual bus. It's the airwaves inside the computer that allow multiple applications to talk to each other. The output I only want on track because I'm going to select it here. So turning this off would deselect this and not allow me to actually route IAC signals out of the application. So we have to have output IAC driver bus 1 track on. If you turn remote on as well on the out, you're going to be getting a double signal, so you don't want that. And I can demonstrate what happens when you do have that. So we'll close this, and we have our note, and if I went ahead and hit play on this, I'm going to see when it hits this note, we're going to get a trigger here. That's a note on, and then we get another trigger there, and that's a note off. From here, what I can do is look at my MIDI monitor. Let me clear it, and I'll show you what happens here. When the on goes on, we have a note on, and then we have a note off. So note on is at 100 velocity, and the note off is 64. That's just standard. So this is an opportunity right here to attach this trigger to something in Ableton. Here it goes again. Okay. Now, what I can do, I don't need to close that, I just clear it out. When I go back to Ableton, what I'll do is I'll prepare to choose a control that I want this clip to activate. And once it's passed, now I have no risk of accidentally assigning something I don't want. click on the MIDI mode here, MIDI assignment mode, and then click the control you want to be controlled by that note. As soon as it hits, it assigns it, and I can unclick the MIDI, stop the transport, maybe stop all clips too if I need to, and if I look at the MIDI right here, I can see that note C-2 was applied to 2 group mixer, right? That's this group, 2 group, and it was applied to the mixer speaker on. That's this button, okay? And so now, if I'm in normal mode here, anytime the playhead, oh, let's play it here. Anytime the playhead passes this note, anytime this note is played on channel 1 out to the IAC driver, it's going to activate the control it's attached to. And to make this go a little bit faster, let's bring this down here, and I'll squeeze it down, make it just a small blip, and then we can make the loop a little bit smaller, and that way it won't take so much time. And I'll hit play, and you can see every time that clip plays this note, it sends a signal out on the IAC bus and triggers that MIDI mapped control, which is this mute button. So you can easily mute and unmute a given channel, or you could solo, or you could use a continuous control to adjust the volume on the track. I can show you how that works. Let's do this. We'll delete this, and let's make this a little bit longer. Let's make this length of 4, ends at 5. Okay, and I'm zoomed out, and I want to go to my envelopes instead. And here I'm going to go to continuous control, and I'll select anyone, just as long as I know that on channel 1 IAC driver, I'm dedicating continuous control 1 to this function. If I were to send continuous control messages out on this particular channel on the IAC driver from any other application, Ableton's going to pick it up, and you might get lost as to why things are happening. So if we take, let's see, the modulation, let's draw a curve. Let's say it's like this. Maybe we'll give it a little bit of a curve there and down, right? And so this is our automation curve. And right now when we hit it, nothing happens, except that you'll notice there is something going out here, and that is a change. Now you'll notice also that when it gets to the plateau, it stops sending. And that's because there's nothing happening. It's actually not changing. The only time the signal is sent is when there's a change from one time point to another. So from here, what we're going to do is the same thing we did with the last clip, and we'll hit MIDI, and then we'll quickly hit the control we want it to control. It'll assign it. We can uncheck it, and now you'll notice that as that curve is drawn, this volume control is moving. So we're able to control the volume slider from one channel from the IAC driver sending channel. And that's basically the easiest way to control tracks that aren't inside the other tracks, if that makes sense. So let's stop this, and oops. Let me delete the map. Actually, I don't need to delete that mapping because it's already there. So we know that 2 is going to be, C-2 is going to turn on and off the mute button. So you'll notice that we still have the envelope there. It's still moving the volume control. And every time it comes around to this note, it's going to change the function here. It's going to change that from on to off, off to on, and so on. Now here's where it gets screwy. If I go to Preferences and I set this output IAC driver to on, you're going to get some strange behavior. You'll notice that when it hits the note, right now it's muted, channel 2 is muted. When it hits, it's going to blip on and off, or it may not do anything because it's sending the signal out twice, and you can see that here. we clear it, let me go ahead and stop this so I can show you this. Take the envelopes. I'm going to delete this automation so it's not sending out and filling up that MIDI monitor. I'll clear the MIDI monitor out, and then we'll hit play, and you can see when we come around to the note that the note hits twice. Yeah, note on, note off, note off. And you don't want that. That's bad because it's actually causing this thing to turn on and turn off very quickly, and you won't get the results you need. So you have to make sure that, whoops, let's do this. You have to make sure that you're configured correctly here. Output on track and input is remote. There are multiple ways to utilize this. If you have another application like MainStage and you want to send the clock signal so that you're in time, what you would do is do output, track on, and sync on. And this is also now sending synchronization to the other programs. If you wanted to be able to control something in MainStage, what you're going to need to do is set up the layout and choose the IAC driver as the input. So it's going to be tuning in like a radio station. You're going to be tuning into the IAC bus and listening on a specific channel. One thing I wouldn't recommend doing is I wouldn't recommend using channel 1 because you could have issues with other controllers. So choose wisely your channels. Make sure all of your hardware is divided up into different channels and that you're not, like your piano, your soft synth, if you have a keyboard that's sending on channel 1, then dial it into channel 1. Don't just use all instrument input. It's going to screw you up because it's going to trigger every one of these soft synths if you had one in each one of these. Anyway, if this was helpful, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll keep posting. Thanks.